Welcome to the Senior Living Marketing Perspectives. I'm Debbie Howard, co-founder of Senior Living Smart. And today I have the pleasure of speaking to Scott McCorvie, and he is the founder of Senior Living Growth Advisors. So welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Debbie. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for inviting me on your show.
Yeah, I was excited to meet you. I was kind of looking at other podcasts that were out there with other people that were passionate about senior living. And I stumbled upon your wonderful show and I said, wow, I really want to get to know Scott better. And, I think you have such an interesting perspective because you really come, your experiences on the investor, asset management. And so, we usually talk about sales, marketing, and occupancy growth. That's what the show is all about.
Right.
But certainly to get perspective from somebody who's looking at it, from that side of the industry would add value to our conversation. So just in case people don't know you, I'd love to hear about kind of your story and your business.
Absolutely. And thanks so much. Love hearing other people that share passion for senior living. So I think that's one thing that's great about the podcast is being able to actually hear that in someone's voice versus, reading it and something written on an email or a newspaper. So welcome to the podcast world. It's great to have you and appreciate being on your show. So I've actually been in senior living for over 15 years. I was super fortunate to find a passion for it early in my career. I was a real estate major at Florida State University, wanted to do something in commercial real estate, but wasn't exactly sure what. Well, a group called Health Trust, which does appraisals and market studies for senior living communities across the country, they were just separating from PricewaterhouseCoopers and they were expanding their team. And so they asked if I'd like to join them. And first I was like, senior living, I had no idea what that was. Yeah. It was still just kind of becoming its own as far as a product. There wasn't a lot of, uniform between the industry. It was just kind of coming to its own. So as a 22-year-old, I wasn't exactly excited about senior living, but then when I started to think about it, the amount of interest, the aging demographics, and extreme specialization, I thought is a big winner. But I really fell in love with it when I did one of my first property tours, and I saw the true impact of this community to the residents, to the family members, and to the employees. It's just creating so much more than just, as we say in real estate, sticks and bricks. I mean, they're a thriving, living community that's impacting a local area and families and residents. So seeing a community where the residents are thriving, happy, there's just life in the building is really what I'm passionate about, is creating more of those types of communities. So was with Health Trust for about 8 years. Great experience. Got a chance to tour senior living communities across the country, meet with executive directors, marketing directors, tour the communities, understand design flows, and kind of the history of senior living. It's amazing when you tour a property, and I'm sure you've done this as well. Yeah. You can kind of tell just when you first drive up, pretty close of when it was first constructed, just based on a lot of the design elements that are incorporated into it. So it was interesting to see and visit a lot of markets and understand the competitive forces and how that plays into the supply and demand and how that plays into your community and pricing and all that stuff. So great experience. And then obviously tore through or was able to chance to look through a lot of different financials from all the leading national and regional operators to understand optimum expense management, optimum staffing, and what really makes a senior living community thrive. And so that's what I did for those 8 years. I was in Sarasota, Florida. Then I went out west to Portland, Oregon, San Diego, California. I moved back to Orlando, it's where I'm from, in 2012. I wanted to stay in senior living, but get more on the investment side. I've been doing a lot of valuation, a lot of market studies, but wanted to enter into the investment side. Well, it just happens that a non-traded real estate investment trust based in Orlando called Centio Healthcare Properties was expanding their team. They were just kind of launching their platform. And so I joined them and worked with the principals there and really did all functions of sourcing, underwriting, and closing acquisition and development investments. So really understood how to structure the investments, what makes a really good investment, cash flow, and then kind of appreciation through a sale. Met a lot of great operators, got to understand a lot more in the operational flow of it, toured a lot of communities as well. and just really went through the whole investment process. We did a lot of asset management too, so weekly meetings on each property and ways that we can try to improve the efficiency, improve the overall resident care, and just make sure that community is working at optimal levels. So I was with them for about 3 years, and then I joined a much larger non-charter REIT called CNL Healthcare Properties, which was just raising a ton of capital. They needed help sourcing and closing quality senior living acquisitions and development opportunities. So I joined them and did that, and we were doing about $1 billion of investments a year. So we're super busy. And then after a number of years, decided to launch a consulting business because I love serving others and I love trying to make an impact to our community. So I felt I could do that better through consulting. So about 3 years ago, I launched Senior Living Growth Advisors for a couple of reasons. One, I could share my passion for senior living with a lot of different groups. And that's what I focused on is groups that are either new to senior living on the investment or development side, trying to understand how it's not real estate, that it's so operationally focused. So helping them find a right operator if that's what they want to do to partner with, help them on their design plans, help them on their pro forma financial performance, help them find capital if that's what they need, and really bring them through the whole development cycle. Senior living, since it's so operationally focused, since it's such a specialty niche, it really needs someone that understands that and has that experience. So that's what I've been fortunate to do, is work with groups on the investment or development side and really help them understand the senior living fundamentals. Also doing, as you mentioned, asset management. So if groups have a property it might be brand new and a great location, but it's just not reaching that occupancy that they expected. It's really going in there and going through the financials, going through the market, going through everything on that property, and then make recommendations. It might be just some simple things, like just trying to show more activity in life in a community, or it might be a deeper dive into staffing or something like that. So helping on the asset management side, also a big thing right now is how to use your CapEx dollars, capital expenditures, to try to maintain the properties competitive with a bunch of new supply coming on. But it's always a balancing act because the owner investors had one CapEx number in mind, and then we find out the actual needs of a community a lot of times exceeds that. So trying to find out what makes the most impact for the dollars that you have and what would create a return on those dollars as well. Because obviously you need roofs and things like that, but what about some new technology? Will that make a larger impact on your overall performance? So working with groups in that, and then also working with operators. A lot of, especially regional operators, they want to expand their platform through new acquisitions, management agreements, new leases, development opportunities. A lot of them are just inundated with development opportunities, but operators a lot of times are so focused on the day-to-day management, which absolutely is a full-time job, that they need someone to really vet the opportunities for them, vet the deal, vet the developer, see if it's something that's worth pursuing. And so that's another avenue I do. And then, as you mentioned, a passion project of mine is about 1.5 years ago, launched a podcast called The Inner Circle of Senior Living. And that's just a way for me to give back to the industry. I have a strong passion for it. So it's reaching out to folks like you, having them kind of describe their passion, and then also how they got into senior living, how their passion has grown, and what their specific expertise is in a senior living topic. So it's been really rewarding and so much fun. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, delighted to have you. It's quite an experience. And, just to put it in perspective, we're recording at the end of August of 2020. And so it's a new abnormal, and just wondering, how have the events of the last 6 months, impacted what you do or how you do it, or what you're seeing in terms of the investment, acquisition, new development world? How have things shifted?
It's definitely a new world we weren't expecting 6 months ago, but I'm super proud of the industry. I think it's been very resilient. I don't think there's enough positive news out there about what these communities are doing. A lot of times there's reports and stories about negative things in the industry, but I think there's been so much positive and so many amazing people that have put their own health at risk to provide this quality of care for the residents. So it is an unprecedented time, but I think our industry has been extremely resilient, and that's been fun to watch. It's definitely put a hold on a lot of investments. For for acquisitions, it might just kind of delay the due diligence. Part of due
Mhm.
diligence is also, and that's the period between when you kind of come to terms on a contract to actually close. And there's a window where you can do a lot of different studies, go further in your underwriting, and making sure that this acquisition and everything kind of is to what your thoughts were when you sized up that deal. So during underwriting, it might be extended. There's usually clauses in the contract if occupancy or performance changes, and that might have an impact. So it's delaying some closings. It's stopping some closings because a seller has one number in mind, but if occupancy dips 20%, of buyers probably not going to have that same number in mind. So
Right.
I think some deals obviously closed. Some deals had a longer due diligence window to try to see if the occupancy dips are long term or if there's some momentum there or what that is, or there might be a repricing strategy along the way. Um,
Mhm.
some development opportunities are on hold. I know some people that, especially new to senior living, are like, listen, we're just, we're going to wait on the sidelines and kind of have this run out and see what happens. Other groups that have had development projects they've been working on are still a go because their mindset is, well, it's still going to take 12 to 16 months before we open. Hopefully COVID is, more under control at that time. So it's really a mixed bag. Some developments I've heard are totally off the table. Some are on hold. Majority, I would say, are on hold, and others are
Mhm.
just kind of going through normal course. But a lot of it's determined by the capital markets too. So the lenders and the equity providers, how fluid are they right now in providing this capital, and kind of what underwriting statistics are needed. And then the other part is a lot of them are busting lending covenants. Let's say in your loan documentation, you have to maintain an occupancy of 85% or 90%. Well, due to COVID, you might be below that. So there's a lot of workouts right now and kind of deferred payments. A lot of the healthcare REITs have talked about deferred rents right now. So all that's been impacting the industry. And that kind of flows through to me and somewhat because if I'm helping a new developer, a new investor in senior living and a project's on hold, obviously I can't help them. So
Right.
it's slowed that down that part. But on the flip side, I've done more asset management work. So properties that are not performing, taking the time now to see if there's certain things that they can change to really increase their performance. So I'd say most of the investments are either on hold or taking longer. Some have closed and some have just kind of walked away for now.
Yeah, I can see that kind of your business may shift more towards the consulting of, turnaround and bringing those numbers back up so that the
Yeah,
investors, can realize the price and can move these deals forward. So,
right,
we've really shifted from kind of selling a real estate proposition and amenities, lifestyle, to selling trust and safety.
right.
And,
Yep,
so, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about, how that's impacting design, both on existing properties that already have a structure that
right.
now, they can't have more than 6 people in the dining room or X number of
Hmm.
people in an activity or all of those kind of common areas. How do we kind of help reimagine those spaces to allow residents to have the freedom to enjoy all of those things in a way that's safe? And then also, what are you seeing with new development of people who do have the ability to pivot and start
Hmm.
putting in, whether it's HVAC or UV lighting, or we have some clients that are putting in plexiglass in the dining room tables, so you can still have
Right.
group dining in a way. So I would love to hear, because I know you do a lot around design. And I haven't heard too many conversations about that. So I'd love to take some time and kind of pick your brain around senior living design
Sure.
and reimagining and innovation, and what's short term and really what's longer term.
Absolutely. And design is so critical. We talked a little bit about this, but when you first tour a community, you can kind of tell what time frame it was constructed because there's certain characteristics that have kind of evolved with our industry that you can see. And I'm glad we have this time now so we can try to kind of consolidate some of our amenity uses because there was a time there the last kind of 5 to 10 years, especially in independent living, because it got so competitive that to maintain a competitive edge, you had to have almost 50% of your community building being common or amenity uses. So it's everything, and you've been through these, but amazing movie theaters and activity rooms and computer centers and libraries and lounges and private dining rooms, everything you can think of, exercise rooms, yoga studios, woodworking. There's so many different common areas, which is great as long as they're utilized. But from my experience, I would tour a lot of these communities, and they were great during that marketing tour to say, hey, you can, we'll have movies here, or, we use this for activities. But most of the time they're empty. So I couldn't really get an understanding of, is there really activities where it seems like everyone's just in their room, right? I don't see a lot of life. Or the activity rooms would be at into the hallway, which during a tour you might just see real quick, but when you're there, it's probably not activities going on. So that was kind of the trend of putting up all these common areas and amenities, which I think are great for residents as long as they're utilized. But I think a lot of them were putting up there as developers as, I've got to have this because the property down the street has it, right? So if they're touring mine and theirs, they're going to say, hey, they got a movie theater, I don't, so they're going to go there. So we were just putting up all these common areas and amenities to stay competitive that weren't being utilized for the most part by the residents. And what that does is just adds to the overall cost. So when you build an area that doesn't get rent on it, you're basically spreading that cost to build it, to insure it, to provide utilities to it, everything. You're spreading that cost, which is almost a sunk cost because there's no rent on it, to all the different residents. So if we can consolidate some of that common area, then we can put those savings on to the resident. And so that's what I like seeing right now. A couple of things. One is we're seeing an age creep, and you've seen this too, whereas people are saying independent living now feels like assisted living. Assisted living feels more like higher end acuity memory care. And that's seen in the demographics too. The average age of independent living used to be in the high 70s. Now it's 82. So there's definitely a creep there. And so you have to provide more care options in the different continuums and still have the amenities that are needed, but also provide those savings to the end user. So what I'm seeing now as far as design trends is having, and this plays into sales and marketing too, is having more centrally located common areas that can be changed throughout the day, that are multi-purpose. So it can be fitness class, and then it can be a dance class. It can be put in some chairs and have activities there. You could do a few things and do a cooking demonstration. You could have a guest lecture in there, but something central that at all times of the day that you can go there and find activities. And I like it central, not at the extremities of the building. So when anywhere you're going, you see what's going on. And when you walk into a community, I think it's so crucial to have a clean lobby, be greeted, and see activities going on. Those are the first impressions. Hit your senses, your smell, your sight, your voice, your hearing, hit your senses, but also how much activity do you see? And that's what I think separates a really strong senior living community from others. And the design goes into that because you can place your lobby. I've seen so many communities that do more of like a multifamily. They have this huge pristine lobby, but then you can't see any dining or activities or anything going on. A really clean lobby, but you can't see any activity. Also, even just, you could put in just some simple photos, or we'll talk about technology. You can run screenshots of some of your activities, but showing some kind of life in that community when you first walk in. I think it's so important, that first impression. Yeah. But in design, it's about creating these central located hubs that are visible when you first walk in, that are centrally located and have the optionality to be changed throughout the day. So you don't need a separate movie theater that's only used maybe twice a week, or a library that stores a lot of books, but no one ever goes in there, maybe to do a puzzle every once in a while, or a computer room where a lot of people have tablets now and don't really use the computer room, but having a centrally located common area that you have your posted activities that can be switched throughout the day. And that also saves on the creating these common areas that aren't receiving a rent, which can be passed down to the end consumer and savings. Also, what I like to see is we saw a trend there in the late 90s of long hallways, longer hallways, right? And they would try to
Yep.
be broken up by these little lounges that never quite worked out, but they try to break it up a little bit. No one really used them, but you have these long hallways. Now, what I like to see in the common area or in the community design is encircling or encompassing communities that don't have a dead end hallway, but provide that socialization because there are no end users. It's all connected. So be it a square or however you want to connect it, those are the ones I like to see. Because as long as you keep moving, you'll run into something, you'll run into someone.
Right.
So I think those are super huge because I talked about the aging continuum, which has made life for a new product that we're seeing. It's this active adult lifestyle living, as I call it, but it's this really it's senior living without the bundled services. So you might have optionality for dining, but you don't have a dedicated dining room and kitchen. You might have the option, you'll have the optionality for activities, but you don't have all the common space that's in typical independent living right now. So I think this new product is more geared to that kind of cohort that's 70 to that 82 of residents that still, they want the socialization, that lifestyle upgrade that's so key, but they also want flexibility of maybe still cooking, going out to eat, traveling. It's hard for some consumers to have the idea of I'm paying for 3 meals a day, even though I might not want to eat 3 meals a day. So it's this unbundled senior living, which I think is really impacting the industry right now and how that fits in to the whole continuum. But I think design, and kind of wrapping up around this question, the design is so important in senior living and especially sales and marketing because you're selling a few things. You're selling that lifestyle upgrade. So showing a thriving, activity-filled community where it looks like you want to be a part of that. It still shows, studies show that residents still spend the majority of their time in the unit. So the more we can have the residents outside interacting with their other, I know it's hard right now. We can talk a little bit more about ways communities are getting around with COVID, but outside of their unit as much as possible, interacting as much as possible with employees and caregivers, with other residents, and that goes into their overall quality of life. And what happens if you have a happy resident, they're much more willing to give that word of mouth that you want. I mean, as you know, that's gold in sales and marketing. You can't buy that reputation, that word of mouth that residents, employees give to other potential residents. No matter how much advertising you do, you can't buy that kind of awareness. So when you provide a social, happy resident, you're much more likely to get that strong word of mouth. And a lot of that comes in, most of it's the culture of the management, but a lot of that also comes into the design flow of having those central activities that are filled and having the activities that the resident wants to be a part of. So long-winded answer to your question as far as design. That's a lot of good stuff. Yeah,
no,
and then as far as
I'm just wondering, with COVID, we talk about, coming in and having that experience and seeing groups of residents. Now, if we can only have 4 residents or 6 residents or every 10 feet and everyone's in masks,
right.
How does that, impact, and how are you seeing operators kind of overcoming that or reimagining, those spaces and those kind of programming elements?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this hit our industry so hard, and first it was just lockdown mode, let's protect our residents. Then it was, can we get our hands on the PPE that we need? So that was kind of making sure everyone, the residents and staff and employees were protected. So once we did that, then it was like, well, we don't have move-ins and we're having our typical move-outs or maybe even more move-outs. So then it was, really kind of hitting the occupancy. And then that started rebounding a little bit. And now it's saying, okay, how can we improve the quality of life of these residents? And that's so crucial right now. So glad that you brought that up. I think operators there's a variety of things that they're doing. I mean, nothing is as good as kind of that hands-on care and hands-on activities and field trips and things that we were doing before COVID hit. But I am seeing some great things that different communities are doing to try to increase the resident engagement. And that's crucial because studies show that when a resident's just not engaged in their unit, that they're much more likely to have depression or become depressed. And if they're clinically depressed, they're much more have they much more have the ability to have other medical conditions. So it's so important that we keep them engaged and try to lower as much depression as possible. And right now, with family members not able to visit, that's even harder. But I have seen our industry do some amazing things. I think right now they're kind of going through the works. I know Argentum and some others are trying to work with best practices. How do we reopen up our communities? Because I think a lot of them are starting to do that. So I think it's a lot of, just keeping the same things, testing temperatures as people come in, making sure, everyone has ample hand washing opportunities and, all of the hand sanitizer and everything that's needed, having the proper PPE for everyone, residents and guests, but starting to create more interaction. One unique thing I see an operator doing is they're making kind of these plexiglass meet and greet stations outdoors. And I think that's more key right now is how do we kind of use the outdoors to create more livable lounges. And so I see one operator doing that, creating these stations that family members can come in and still have the protection of the plexiguard, but you can have interaction and you just reserve that. And obviously they're sanitized and cleaned down each time. So providing a way to do that. Another thing I'm seeing operators do right now is really hone in on a couple of things. Telemedicine, which has been there for a number of years, but never really accepted or utilized in senior living. So I'm seeing that a lot more, and leveraging a lot more technology. I'm seeing a lot more kind of voice activated technologies go into these, a lot more kind of TV oriented technology. I know one operator is doing an educational series right now. I forget if it's podcasts or YouTubes, but they're having their operator university, but they're also going and talking with each resident and documenting their story that they can share to other residents. So that's creating,
that's great.
That's creating that strong attachment to others, that connection, and then really documenting these amazing stories that our residents have that others can learn from. And now that they have the time, they're going room by room and just taking a day to, talk to the resident, find out their story, and then share that to the other residents. So I think that's just a great way to try to, maintain or increase engagement during these times. But also I've heard of hallway yoga, or, in your hallway, try to do different activities, games and things through your TV. I've seen Zoom meetings with bingo or whatever, game that you can think of, but really taking this time to make sure that you have the best technology, and that you're actively trying to use that to increase your resident engagement, and then also increase your overall satisfaction of the resident and their lifestyle in that community.
Great. So what are some of the new kind of emerging technologies that that are coming into the market that you see potential for kind of helping operators redefine some of these experiences?
Absolutely. I think there's two main ones. I think ways that we can improve is try to increase efficiency. So make sure that we're operating, that all the staff that a community needs, because staffing can be up to 50% of operating expenses. So it's so critical. Turnover is huge. So what are ways that we can leverage technology to increase the residents' lifestyle and engagement, also the staff's engagement, because studies show when a caregiver is more engaged with a resident, they're much more likely to stay there than if they don't have a connection. It's much more have the option to leave. And as I said, turnover is so key. So having the culture in your management company and having ways that we can increase connection between caregiver and resident. And also, and there's technologies out there that are doing that, that are trying to create, like I said, documenting resident stories through different platforms. A lot of them are voice activated, so recording a story with someone, or having a resident caregiver just come in and ask these questions and then post that. Also, I'm seeing a lot of voice activated technology, which is like Alexa, do this, or Alexa, do that, but it's specific for seniors. So it can say, Alexa, what's the menu today? Alexa, what's the activity schedule? And on top of that, it's really hitting. It's not totally utilized right now for a call system, but you have kind of a second option there. If you happen to slip and fall, you're not wearing your pendant. Unfortunately, we're seeing residents not wear their
Yeah.
pendants
Yeah.
because it makes them feel older. So if they're not
Right.
wearing their pendant and they have a slip and fall or they're not by pull cord, they still have voice technology in their unit that they can call for help. So that's great for the resident, but it's also peace of mind for the adult child, which we're seeing is making a lot more of those decisions right now. That when you're touring community and they have this, this voice activated technology
Mhm.
to try to, complement their activities and engagement, but also have that kind of peace of mind. That's kind of a leg up right now for the competition. And it's really not that expensive to implement some of these technologies. Another one, as I mentioned, is using the standard TV, but having a lot more optionality. Have it run screenshots of, and then you can have TVs that are also not utilized, like in common areas that are usually turned off. You can
Mhm.
run slideshows of activities, of staff members engaging, of dining, all these things you can run on your TV that is typically turned off, but it turns into a tool during your community tour that you're seeing that life in a community instead of just a blank TV. So you can run these slideshows. You can also have the optionality for video. So let's say you're touring the dining room and it's empty right now. There's no dining service. You can say, hey, well, let's look at this 2-minute message from our head chef. And he welcomes the resident, you know, thanks for joining us today. As you can see, we take pride in our dining, show shots of the kitchen and things like that, and a personalized touch. So that's something like that is a way that a resident can feel that connection, can feel that life of a community, even though you might not be at a dining service at that time, and create that employee kind of resident connection. But also using this TV technology in a residence unit. So having them have different games, letting them use that for email or texting. But there's a lot more interactivity and having, kind of an activity schedule so resident always knows what's going on, having the menu for today, all those things that might be, they call the front desk or something. It frees up some hands when you have that technology right there. So there's a lot, and there's a ton more coming out. But
Yeah.
I'm bullish on leveraging as much technology as possible to increase resident engagement, because again, that's what we're selling, this lifestyle. I think with more kind of telemedicine and technology that's allowing residents to age in place more, that we really have to sell the lifestyle, because otherwise they're just downgrading from a larger house to a smaller unit. So if we're not selling the lifestyle, it's a hard sell of, okay, you need to move out of your house and go into this, 1-bedroom apartment. But if we're saying, hey, look, you're isolated in that house, look at all the fun things we can do when we move in here. And on top of that, we have food options and care and things like that. That's really, I think, what sells the resident, and what we're going to have to focus on here going forward.
Yeah, and I know in assisted living and memory care, where it's primarily the adult child influencer,
Mm-hmm.
they're also highly motivated in learning about safety protocols and all of the, as much as the lifestyle is great, and that's definitely what the resident is looking for.
Right.
If we can't, first of all, sell the adult child on this is safe, then we don't even get to have a lifestyle kind of conversation. So in the sales and marketing world right now, we are hearing a lot of, what changes have you made? So things like UV lighting, which is shown to reduce the impact of, virus and infection control and spreading. Things like those misting, disinfecting,
Mm-hmm.
all of the, the protocols. But I would say even some of the technology assists that changing out HVAC systems. We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing people, and maybe it's more in new development where you have the ability to make those changes. I know we're working with someone now who just added $400,000 worth of infrastructure investment that was
Right.
just around safety, infection
Yeah.
control, air
Sure.
quality, circulation. And so we're getting a lot more of those types of things. Are you seeing anything? And is there a difference between clients you're working with in the development world that may still be able to make those infrastructure investments and changes versus people maybe who have existing, maybe older properties that they're looking to renovate? Because this
Yeah,
wasn't
great
planned,
point.
right? No capital, none of your capital was like, hey, I had a roof, I had a generator,
Right.
and I had, new carpet in my budget, and now I have like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in terms of some of those other technology investments that's maybe around health, well-being, and sanitation and infection?
Yeah, no, great question. Because it's so true. When developers, thought about this, they can plan for new carpeting, new painting, new roofs, but you don't
Yeah.
really plan for a COVID pandemic, a pandemic like this really impacting the industry. And another good point is, yeah, there's been a lot more operating expenses with PPE, with overtime, that go into this, but also people don't talk about this as much, but there's also a lot of capex, as you mentioned, of putting in new infrastructures to maintain that safety and maintain the healthiness of the residents, which definitely has a cost to it. Putting in the UV lights, putting in the spray detentions, like as I mentioned, the plexiglass socialization places, all that has a cost to it that wasn't anticipated. However, yeah, it can be a marketing tool too, because the demand hasn't changed the past 6 months. The demand is still there. What's changed is the number of move-ins. So there's still a built-up demand of residents, of potential residents that need this care. However, due to their peace of mind or due to adult child's peace of mind, they're not making that decision right now, or not as much as we had thought, um, for new move-ins. However, move-outs are still happening at the same pace, and that's really what's hit the occupancy. So as an industry, and I think this is great that individual communities are doing this, but as an industry, it's how do we rebrand and show that these communities are safe? And on top of that, you really should move into a community. Now's the time to move into a community because you can get more engagement than what you're currently getting, even though it's not full engagement, but it's more, it's better. And on top of that, they really are safe based on, you know, you can even make an argument it's more safe because you're not going out to the
Mhm.
grocery store in a lot of these areas that aren't as controlled as a senior living community from the outside influences. So how do we get that into the industry? And I think we're trying. Like, there's a lot more stores out
Yeah.
there. Of course, the stores that sell are the ones where there's COVID exposure and a lot of move outs. But communities are creating a very safe environment. They're investing a lot of capital into it. And a lot of the technologies you mentioned are so key. And that also goes into sales and marketing, because how do we get, a way of, okay, well, maybe we'll just wait 6 months and make a decision from then to actually now is the good time to move in, because of X, Y, and Z. And it's actually more safe if we think about it than mom going to the grocery store and exposing herself to, the virus that way. So I think there is, all those technologies that you mentioned on top of the resident engagement, that is ways that we can try to show potential resident that there still is engagement during these times, but also showing that it's safe during these times too. I think are super important.
Yeah, I know. I look at one of the analogies we've been looking at is, the difference between baseball and basketball, right? So baseball's like lots of infections, games are getting canceled, people are getting sick, and basketball's in a bubble. And
Yeah,
it's
right.
highly regulated, and everyone's moving about freely, and they haven't had any outbreaks. So in some way, what senior living does is create a bubble, to really guard and protect the access and egress within that bubble, but it really limits exposure. So I think it's a great, I look at my mom, she's 87, she's home alone. I look at her as baseball, right? I don't
Hmm.
know who's coming in and out. I don't know
Right.
where she's driving or what store she's going into or what interaction she's having. But I know in my community that there are all of these protocols, and I know that there's this bubble around, that experience. So
Yeah.
I guess the last question I have is on the upside, because we are very optimistic here. What are
Yeah.
some of the things that we have done to reimagine the senior living experience, and things that we've had to adopt to, quickly, that we probably should have done honestly years ago,
Hmm.
that we resisted. But what are some of those things that you think do make it a better experience? And what do you think will stick and continue, even when there's a vaccine and when all of these kind of hyper protocols maybe aren't as necessary? Like, what are the things we shouldn't throw out? What have we learned?
Yeah, great question. And that kind of first, I think of the design component to it. I think those are lessons that we've learned over the last 20, 30 years. Again, this is such a new product compared to other real estate, but how are we developing, how are we constructing these communities and not just putting up amenity uses to have in a marketing brochure or marketing tour, because right now you can't even do that marketing tour. So
Right.
what common areas do we need that are utilized that show activities on a daily basis that shows that lifestyle upgrade that residents desire and can be changed throughout the day? I think that's one of the big focuses right now. So going from 50% of space that's not rentable to bringing that number maybe down to 25 and 30%, but having multi-purpose rooms that can be changed throughout the day that residents still know that there's activities here that's seen by people just passing by all times, but having that central hub and lowering the amount of common area that's not utilized. Also, I think kind of a trend going forward is optionality. We had these bundle services, but really kind of unbundling that, giving more optionality to the resident and family, and so they're paying for what they desire. So maybe unbundling dining, unbundling, some of the all-inclusive care and things like that. So you can maintain a competitive advantage, especially with this new kind of active adult lifestyle product coming on that's really totally unbundled. I think residents
Mm-hmm.
much more are willing to kind of a la carte their services based on, everything's included in my rent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that, again, it creates that more independence feeling that I'm not forced in this dining room 3 times a day, that, maybe I
Right.
have one meal I can do, or, a number of floating meals that I can do, but I'm not just locked in this community. I'll never leave. I have 3 meals a day or go to my room. It's getting out of that mindset of, having that optionality. I can still cook if I want. I can still go to a restaurant. I can still travel, but I have quality dining, on site if that's what I desire. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Focusing on the lifestyle upgrade. I think this is huge, making sure that's top of mind. Again, if we're selling a resident between their house and just an apartment unit, the house is bigger. There has to be more for them to desire that move. And I think that more is that lifestyle, that socialization. Instead of being isolated, you have this thriving community. And that's, I think what's selling this move. You probably heard of the villages here in Florida. There's Margaritaville, Sun City Center. There's a lot of these huge, explosive active adult communities. And the reason that they're so explosive is due to their social calendar. If you look, their social calendar is from 7 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. There's something going on at all times. And that's why
Yeah.
these units are selling. We're selling this lifestyle upgrade. The villages was built in, really it was just a cow field, in the middle of nowhere. And it
Yeah.
just blew up in this explosive development because they were focused on this lifestyle and having these activities all day. And that's what's selling these, 65 plus residents and moving in there. So I think it's focused on that lifestyle, creating engagement through the common areas, through the staffing, through the activities, and really in technology as much as you can, but creating as much engagement as possible. Um, so I think those are the main things. And one more thing is going back to sales and marketing and technology. I think one thing that we're seeing much more now in the past 6 months is how can you leverage technology in the sales and marketing process. So before, our business was much more of a hands-on, person to person, come in for lunch, let me show you, let me introduce you to people. It's that face-to-face sale. Now we're saying you got to do a phone sale closing, right? Which is different.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have that face-to-face interaction. You can't read someone on the spot, and it's much longer close process than, hey, I like this community, let's sign and move them on in here as soon as possible. So how can you leverage technology in that aspect? Well, I'm seeing a lot of great revamping of websites. So taking the time now to really focus on your websites, again, creating pictures that are showing engagement. So I love seeing, headshots of staff and things like that. But what kind of engagement? Show a dining service, show an activity, show a field trip in the past, show a resident using their in-room technology, show, maybe using one of these and show latest, pictures of things, maybe using one of these plexiglass stations to have interaction. So how are you showing on your website, which, as we mentioned, adult children are much more influential now in the decision. Adult children are much more have the ability to Google a resident or Google assisted living in my town and look at options. So how is your website reflecting your community and showing your engagement, especially during these times? And what I love too is having, photos of engagement, but also
Mhm.
having as many interviews with staff as you can have, and have a virtual tour that you can, a residents, instead of having to go in there, they can still get a really good idea of what your community is without even having to step foot in your community. So if you can sell them without even having to pick up that phone call, then that's huge. And then last, make sure that you're following up on your leads. Leads are so important right now. And I'm still hearing a lot of stories of leads that aren't getting followed up on. So as you know, they're gold. So making sure that you're following up on them, understanding their timeline, and getting that virtual close, I think is so key.
Yeah. And I think it's wonderful to know that we can do virtual closes, and we kind
I
of have
know.
broken down that mindset of you can't sell to them unless they come in the community. So
Hmm.
you think much bigger thoughts. I thought what you were going to say is that they would keep the margarita cart going in the hallway even after it was over.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think
Yeah, no,
a lot of the things that we've just had to, come up with on the fly just
right.
to keep that sense of fun and life going in the community. I've seen people like take wheelchairs and put like a little ice cream truck box design around it and then go down the halls, like the Good Humor Man. And I think some of these things, as silly as it sounds, we probably should have been doing more video, more virtual. We should have
Yeah.
been leveraging technology, inviting families in via, video town halls, not making them drive to the community for the friend and
Hmm.
family night or whatever it was. There were
Right.
so many ways that we probably could have enhanced connectivity and communication. And now we're just doing it because we're forced to. But I do think that the good thing is when we can go back to those more traditional ways of staying connected and being engaged. And
Hmm.
we're going to have a whole new set of skill sets that we didn't have before this, and may have taken years or decades to evolve if it wasn't really externally forced upon us to
Right.
rethink, reimagine. So I think what you offered is so important today.
Yeah, and I think it's so crucial because obviously word of mouth, strong reputation is number one. But taking the time now to really revamp and focus on your website, I think is so
Yeah.
important. And creating that, try to capturing that engagement through a website. I know that's hard to do. So many people like to take, photos of an empty dining room. However, that's
Right.
not showing a life of that community. You might have a beautiful dining room, beautiful furniture, it's clean, and that's all the photos they have on the website. So taking the time now and having professional, photos. So taking the time now to have professional photos of showing engagement and showing as much engagement that we can have right now, having more kind of timely photos on your website, and having, like I said, if you can have some interviews with staff, have, your dining manager welcome them, or head chef, have your executive director, your head of nursing, just a quick little video of welcoming them, maybe letting them know the things that they're doing to maintain safety, things that they're doing to encourage socialization. So make it timely. I think is a great time to invest in your website right now. Have that virtual tour,
Yeah.
have good photos that aren't just empty rooms, but actually showing some type of engagement, and have some interviews with your staff members can really be influential to a potential resident and their family before they even step, foot in your community.
No, those are great points. I completely agree. And I'm amazed when I go on to most senior living websites. I'm not seeing a change in messaging at
I
all.
know.
Nothing.
I know.
It's like,
On the
come
hooter, it
here
still
and
says
we,
like copyright 2014. I'm like, no.
yeah, exactly. If you're not changing your message, like we're rewriting copy to be relevant. Like the copy literally on the homepage says, we know you're worried about COVID. We are too. Here's
Right.
what we're doing about it. And if you're
Hmm.
burying that message on a hidden page with a banner, look for our COVID updates,
Yeah.
we're past that. It is time for transparency,
Yeah.
honesty, rebuilding trust, and being real with people.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of work to do, FAQ sections with each community, giving them real-time updates and really putting all those questions. Will I be able to visit mom? How can I stay connected? What's your testing protocol? Like if we can provide that level of transparency and honesty and engagement on the website, because 87% of your prospects go there before they ever pick
Hmm.
up the phone.
Yeah.
But I am shocked at how little movement I am seeing on the website and messaging front. I would say in the whole digital
Same.
front, I still
Yeah.
see people wasting all their money on paid digital ads saying,
Yeah. Or direct
schedule a
mail.
tour today, live your best life. I'm like,
Right.
what are you selling? Because
Yeah.
that is only not a positive statement. It's actually very tone deaf, and
Right.
it shows that you're not relevant, or even worse, that you're not caring. So, I think we'll come through this stronger. I think we'll all learn from it and grow from it, and learn new ways of attracting, nurturing, and advancing prospects through their journey in a way that's more personal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're seeing good things on the future, and the leads are coming up end of August. Obviously, Q2
Right.
was ugly. But now we're seeing, we're looking at July trends and now August trends, and at least the leads are coming up. Virtual tours are coming up. It's just that tour to move in. It's just that decision
Yeah.
piece that's tough. So Scott, as people, are listening to this and they want to know more about you and your company and your services and how you can help, what's the best way for them to learn more?
Well, thanks so much, Debbie. Yeah, this has been great talking with you. Love to have you on my show as well, but this has been super collaborative, and I think it's important to get a lot of these messages out there. Yeah, the best way to reach me is through email. My email is Scott, SCOTT, at srgrowth.com. So SR is in senior, growth.com. Website is www.srgrowth.com. Got my bio and a lot of my services on there, so feel free to check that out. But yeah, I love connecting with people. I love people in senior living. I love kind of showing my passion for this industry. So if I can help anyone in their audience, in your audience, feel free to reach out to me either through email or check out the website. We'd love to even just set up an introduction call. So that's the best way to reach me, and it's been great being on your show.
Yeah, appreciate it. And all of that contact information and Scott's LinkedIn profile will all be in the show notes. So, Scott, thank you for sharing your senior living marketing perspectives, and hopefully we'll chat again real soon.
All right, thanks, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.